What if the most dangerous job in the American West wasn't hunting outlaws, but simply making sure the mail arrived on time? In the late 1800s, a 6-foot-tall woman carrying a Winchester shotgun and a Smith Wesson revolver became a living legend across the frozen plains of Montana. This was Mary Fields, better known as Stagecoach Mary, the first black female mail carrier in history, and a figure who defied every law of the frontier. Linked to a series of encounters with wolves, outlaws, and the harshest winters on record, her story forced a major shift in how the United States Postal Service viewed its most dangerous routes. But there is a hidden detail in the historical record, a specific event in the deep snow that experts are still trying to fully piece together today. By the end of this case file, you will understand the secret reason why Mary never missed a delivery, even when the horses themselves gave up. Let us look at the evidence and step back into a century where survival was the only law that mattered, and the trails were marked by those brave enough to walk them. To understand the late 1800s, you have to feel the biting wind of a Montana winter, a landscape so brutal, it was known as the graveyard of the ambitious. The cultural vibe was one of rugged isolation, where the arrival of the mail was the only thread connecting lonely settlers to the rest of civilization. But for the officials in Washington, the Montana routes were a logistical nightmare that saw dozens of carriers quit or lose their lives to the elements. Mary Fields looked at this impossible terrain not as a victim of circumstance, but as a tactical challenge that required a specific kind of mental fortitude. She realized that in a world where speed was often a liability, the person who possessed the most endurance held the ultimate power over the wilderness. The key players in the region were hardened frontiersmen and weary soldiers, yet none of them could match the reliability of a woman born into slavery who had fought for every inch of her freedom. They were not expecting a woman in her 60s to outwork every man in the territory, but Mary was not a typical carrier. This mattered because it was not just about logistics. It was a psychological victory over the environment, proving that the mail could move regardless of the obstacle. The rise of Stagecoach Mary was a calculated response to the desperate need for connection in a territory that felt like the edge of the world. As we move into the timeline of the investigation, the records reveal a series of events, starting in 1895, that left postal inspectors in a state of absolute awe. It began with reports of the Iron Woman, a carrier who would disappear into blizzards that had grounded every other stagecoach in the county. Upon closer inspection of these early reports, investigators noticed something strange. Mary was often arriving on foot when the snow became too deep for her horses. She was not just driving the mail. She was wearing snowshoes and carrying the heavy bags on her back for miles through wolf territory. By mid-1897, the frequency of these successful deliveries during record-breaking storms established her as the most reliable asset in the entire department. The investigation timeline shows a critical turning point when a stagecoach was found overturned in a ravine after a night of sub-zero temperatures. Instead of a tragedy, searchers found Mary standing guard over the mailbags, having fought off a pack of predators with nothing but her grit and her firearms. Authorities began to realize they were not dealing with a simple employee, but a force of nature who operated on a code of personal honor that was unbreakable. Every route she took was documented, but the files reveal that she often deviated from the path to find safer passage through the mountain passes. The historical detectives began to focus on the hidden clues in her equipment, wondering how she maintained her weapons in conditions that froze steel. They discovered that Mary used a specific type of animal fat to lubricate her gear, a trick she likely learned during her years of survival in the South and Midwest. This was a detail the public missed. Her survival was not just about luck. It was about a deep knowledge of chemistry and wilderness craft. The records reveal that Mary had a specific preference for her route, choosing the ones that men half her age were too terrified to touch. Investigators also found that Mary was a master of psychological intimidation, once telling a group of hecklers that she was the only man in Montana who knew how to work. As the deep investigation continued, a pattern of the silent protector emerged, where Mary would often check on elderly settlers along her route without being asked. It was a masterclass in community intelligence, keeping her eyes on the movement of the trails, while the rest of the world stayed huddled by the fire. But as we look closer at the dark psychology of this period, we have to ask what drives a person to face certain death for a few dollars and a bag of letters. Mary Field's behavior was not just about the paycheck. It was about a deep-seated need to prove her worth in a country that had once viewed her as property. Psychologists who have studied her life suggest she possessed an extreme level of resilience focus, where the mission becomes the only thing that exists. She viewed the mail route as a battlefield, and every letter delivered was a victory in her personal war for respect and autonomy. This psychological concept of radical reliability explains why she never missed a day. To fail would be to surrender the ground she had gained for her people. The people she encountered in the saloons of Cascade, Montana, often underestimated her, but they quickly learned that Mary was not a person to cross. By analyzing her social interactions, historians found she was a woman of few words, but decisive action, often settling disputes with a single look or a well-placed punch. This created a legendary status that was nearly impossible to bridge, as the townspeople saw her as an untouchable guardian of their communication. However, the twist in this case does not come from a gunfight or a wolf attack, but from a quiet observation made during the Great Blizzard of 1898. While the Postal Service was obsessing over the horses and the wagons, they failed to notice the pattern of the footprints in the white. Upon closer inspection of the journals from that winter, Mary was spotted walking the entire route through 10 feet of snow while carrying the heavy leather pouches. This was not a desperate act of survival. It was a planned contingency she had practiced for months in the early autumn. The irony was that while the government was trying to build better wagons, the real solution was the sheer physical strength of a woman who refused to stop. This need to finish the job was Mary's psychological anchor, a trait that defined her long after she retired from the Postal Service. In the early 1900s, the authorities shifted their entire focus toward motorized transport, but they never forgot the lessons Mary taught them about the human element. This forced a major shift in how the government recruited for the frontier, moving from looking for traditional drivers to seeking out those with extreme survival skills. They realized that the machine was only as good as the person behind it, and Stagecoach Mary was the gold standard. The investigation into her legacy finally narrowed down to the town of Cascade, where she spent her final years as a beloved member of the community. Even in her old age, she maintained her fierce independence, running a laundry business and babysitting local children who called her Black Mary. When she finally passed away in 1914, there was no massive archive of her thoughts. There was just a trail of successfully delivered mail and a reputation for honesty. The lingering mystery remains how much of her story has been lost to the snow and what other feats she performed that were never written down. Some believe that her ghost still walks the mountain passes when the winter gets lean, a silent sentinel for those lost in the cold. The clues were always there, hidden in the weight of a mailbag and the steady aim of a shotgun. If you look at the maps of the old Montana mail routes today, the paths she carved are still etched into the geography of the American West. The legend of Stagecoach Mary is a powerful reminder that the most unbreakable codes are the ones we write for ourselves. To mark this piece of evidence in our collective file, make sure to like the video so we know which historical trails to follow next. What do you think was the most impressive thing about Mary's survival skills? Comment your theory below to help the squad solve the mystery. To access the next case file and continue the investigation into the world's most incredible figures, make sure you are subscribed to the unit. We are constantly scanning the archives for hidden details that the public missed, and we need every detective on the team to stay sharp. Upon closer inspection of our upcoming files, we have found a connection between an old frontier mystery and a modern cold case. The deeper you look, the more you realize that no case is ever truly closed. It just waits for the right investigator to look again. The files reveal that even the most forgotten heroes leave a trail, whether it is a mark in the snow or a story passed down through generations. As we close the folder on Stagecoach Mary for today, remember that the true strength of a person is often found in the tasks no one else wants to do. The investigation continues in the next briefing, where we will look at a mystery involving a vanished gold shipment and a coded map found in a boot. Every detail matters, from the type of boots she wore to the brand of tobacco she smoked. Do not let the trail go cold. Stay tuned for the next update from our research headquarters. The psychological profile of Mary Fields is a study in how dignity is earned through relentless, unshakable action. By understanding her journey, we understand the evolution of the American spirit and the birth of the modern postal service. This has been a deep dive into the 1800s, a century of dust, ice, and a woman who conquered them both. The historians of today are still learning that you can't judge a book by its cover, especially when that cover is carrying a loaded shotgun. Keep your eyes open and your mind focused on the heroes that history almost forgot. The next case is already unfolding, and we need you ready to pick apart the historical evidence. History is written by the victors, but the truth is found in the footsteps of those who walk the hardest paths. We will find that truth, one file at a time, together as a dedicated detective squad. The Stagecoach has long since stopped running, but the mystery of Mary's endurance remains a fascinating puzzle for us all. Are you ready to open the next drawer in our evidence room? Keep your notifications on so you don't miss our next briefing. The investigation is ongoing, and your participation is the key to our success.